They hung my mom on a tree. Please, you have to save her. Please. In the thick fog of a mountain road at dawn, that voice rang out, shaking, shattered yet strong enough to bring an entire convoy of black SUVs to a dead stop. A little girl, barefoot, blood smeared across the cold pavement, her desperate eyes locked onto a man the underworld feared. He wasn't the kind of man who stopped out of compassion. He didn't save people. He gave orders, and people disappeared. But that night, one sentence from a child dragged something buried deep inside him back to the surface. And then, he stepped out of the car. No one knew that decision would change everything, not just the fate of a mother and daughter, but also awaken a secret powerful enough to tear apart the empire he had built with blood. But the most terrifying question is, why did that little girl choose him to beg for help? If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the quiet power of kindness, especially when no one else chooses to show it. Share your thoughts in the comments, and tell us where you're watching from. Which city and country are you in, and what time is it there right now? It's always amazing to see how stories like this connect people from all over the world. If moments like this remind you of the beauty of humanity, please like the video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more powerful stories that celebrate compassion, courage, and the simple acts of kindness that can change a white life. October 2025 dawned cold and gray over the winding backroads outside Asheville, North Carolina. Mist clung to the Appalachian foothills like smoke from a dying fire, swallowing the narrow two-lane asphalt, until the world narrowed to 20 feet of pavement and the dark silhouettes of pine trees standing sentinel on either side. The air carried the sharp bite of wet earth-fallen needles and the faint metallic promise of rain that never quite arrived. Nothing moved except the slow drift of fog and the occasional drip from sodden branches. A convoy of 3 black SUVs rolled steadily through the haze engines, low and throaty tires hissing on damp pavement. In the lead vehicle, Jack Iron Callahan sat in the back seat, coat unbuttoned over a charcoal shirt, hands resting loosely on his knees. At 45, he remained broad-shouldered and fair-skinned, his American roots evident in the faint freckles that still ghosted across his nose despite years of indoor deals and nighttime work. His hair, once sandy, had darkened to a steel gray at the temples. His eyes, pale blue, almost colorless in certain lights, watched the world with the detached precision of a man who had long ago learned that emotion was a liability. Inside the vehicle smelled of leather-faint cigar smoke and the clean sharpness of his cologne. Mike, his second-in-command, drove with both hands steady on the wheel, eyes flicking constantly to the mirrors. The other 2 vehicles followed in tight formation headlights, cutting pale tunnels through the mist. They were returning from a quiet meeting in Boone. Nothing flashy, just business that needed no paper trail. Jack preferred these back roads. Highways had too many cameras, too many eyes. The convoy rounded a gentle curve, and the lead SUV slowed abruptly. Mike cursed under his breath. Ahead, a small figure darted from the tree line straight into the middle of the road. She was a child no more than 8, barefoot, wearing a faded pink dress streaked with mud and pine needles. Her dark hair hung in wet ropes across her face. She ran with desperate, uneven strides, arms pumping, breath tearing from her chest in visible puffs. Her feet left small, bloody prints on the asphalt that vanished almost instantly in the fog. Jack leaned forward slightly. The child did not slow. She ran directly toward them, voice cracking the silence like glass. "Help!" The word ripped out raw and high. "Please, someone help!" Mike braked fully. The SUVs halted in perfect unison, engines idling deep and predatory. Doors remained closed for a long beat. Jack studied the girl through the tinted glass. She stumbled, caught herself on trembling hands, pushed up again. Her knees were scraped raw. Thin wrists bore angry red circles, rope burns fresh and vicious. She wore no coat despite the chill. Her thin frame shook violently, not just from cold but from something deeper, something that had chased her out of those woods. Jack felt it then, a faint, unwelcome tug low in his chest. Recognition. No. Something older. Memory of a different child decades ago, small and helpless in a different kind of darkness. He pushed the thought down hard. Sentiment had no place here. Mike glanced back. Boss Jack raised one hand. Silence fell instantly. The girl reached the lead SUV and collapsed to her knees 3 feet from the front bumper. Mud splashed across the chrome. Her small hands shot forward, fingers curled like claws, reaching for something, anything that might answer. "They hung my mom on a tree," she sobbed. The words tumbled between gasps. "Please, you have to save her. Please." Jack's expression remained stone. He did not move at first. He simply watched. The rope burns on her wrists told one story. The way her body shook told another. Exhaustion, terror, but not hysteria. There was focus beneath the fear, a child's desperate clarity. Inside him, something cracked open just a sliver. Guilt, long dormant, stirred like an animal roused from sleep. He had built walls against this feeling, walls of money, power, calculated distance. Yet here it came again, uninvited, the echo of his own childhood helplessness, the night he had stood frozen, while someone he loved was taken from him forever. The remorse had never left. It had only hardened into the man he became. He opened the door. Cold air rushed in. The girl lifted her head, her eyes wide, hazel-rimmed red, locked on his. For a heartbeat, time compressed. Jack stepped out, tall, an unhurried suit jacket hanging open to reveal the crisp white shirt beneath. Tattoos peeked at his collar, old ink-faded symbols of loyalty and loss. He looked down at her without kneeling. The child stared up, breath hitching. She saw danger in his stillness, in the way the other men emerged behind him. Dark suits, disciplined movements, hands resting near concealed weapons. Yet she did not run. Instead, she whispered again, softer, more broken. "She's still there. They left her hanging. Please." Jack tilted his head. His voice came low, controlled, carrying no warmth but no cruelty either. Where she lifted a trembling arm and pointed into the wall of fog and trees. "In there. Not far. I ran so fast." Her voice cracked completely. She doubled over, pressing her muddy forehead to the pavement as though the cold might steady her spinning world. Jack glanced at Mike. No words passed. Engines shut off one by one. Doors closed with soft clicks. 3 men moved into loose formation around him, Mike ahead, the others on the flanks, hands now openly near holsters. Jack looked down at the child again. "Stand up." She struggled. Legs wobbled dangerously. Before she fell again, Jack caught her elbow, not gently, but firmly enough to steady. She stared up at him with eyes that held more hope than any child should place in a stranger, especially one like him. "You lead," he said. "We follow." She nodded frantically and turned toward the forest. 3 steps later, her knees buckled completely. This time Jack did not wait. He lifted her effortlessly, settling her against his side with one arm. She weighed almost nothing, bones and thin cotton and terror. Her arms wrapped around his neck instinctively, her face buried against his shoulder. He felt hot tears soak through expensive wool. "Hold on," he said. Not a suggestion, a command. She obeyed. They moved into the trees as a unit. Branches clawed at sleeves, roots snagged shoes. The temperature dropped sharply. Fog thickened until the world became gray layers of pine and shadow. Jack felt the child's heartbeat against his chest, frantic, too fast, a tiny drum signaling survival. Inside him, the conflict raged. Why stop? Why risk exposure for strangers? He had rules, clean lines, no charity, no weakness. Yet the girl's small weight pressed against him like an accusation. Every step deeper into the woods dragged old guilt to the surface. The sister he could not save, the nights he had lain awake, replaying his failure, the remorse that had forged him into Iron Callahan. Now here was another child, running toward danger instead of away, trusting the first dangerous man she saw. He hated the feeling, hated how it tore at the armor he had spent decades building, yet he could not put her down. Behind them the fog closed like a curtain. Ahead the forest waited, silent, ancient, holding its breath. The child whispered against his shoulder, voice small and cracked. "Her name is Sarah. My mom's name is Sarah." Jack did not answer, but inside the name lodged like a splinter. Sarah, a simple name, a poor woman's name, a name that belonged to someone who had endured too much already. And now, whether he wanted it or not, she belonged to the moment he had chosen to stop. The trail opened into a small clearing. An ancient oak dominated the center branches, spreading wide like judgment. From one thick limb hung a woman mid-30s, thin to the point of frailty, wrists bound above her head with coarse rope. Her head lolled forward. Dark hair curtained her face. She swayed gently in a breeze that touched nothing else. The child in Jack's arms screamed a sound so raw it cut through every layer of his control. He tightened his grip on her instinctively. "Don't look," he said quietly. It was not comfort. It was an order. She buried her face deeper, body shaking with silent sobs. Jack's men moved with practiced efficiency. One sprinted forward to check for a pulse. Another scaled the tree with a tactical knife. The third positioned himself to catch her weight. Jack stood apart, child still in his arms, watching. Inside him the storm intensified. Guilt clawed harder now, guilt for every choice that had led him here, for the empire built on fear, for the sister whose death he could never undo. And beneath it all, a fiercer emotion he refused to name: responsibility. Not for the woman hanging there, not yet. For the child who had run to him. For the child who, without knowing it, had just torn open every wound he thought long scarred over. The rope parted with a soft sigh. The woman dropped. Strong arms caught her, lowered her gently to the damp earth. Alive came the report. Weak, pulse thready, hypothermia setting in. Jack shifted the girl, so she faced away from the sight. "She's going to be okay," he told her. Voice flat, final. The child lifted her head just enough to meet his eyes. In that gaze, trust fragile and absolute, Jack felt the last of his resistance shatter. He had stopped, and nothing would ever be the same. The clearing felt wrong the moment they stepped into it, like the forest itself had pulled back to watch. The ancient oak stood alone in the center, massive and gnarled, its lowest branches thick enough to bear the weight of a grown woman without complaint. From one of those branches, Sarah Harper hung, wrists bound high above her head with coarse yellow rope that had bitten deep into pale skin. Her thin cotton blouse, once pale blue, now filthy and torn, clung to a body that looked half its proper size. Malnutrition had carved hollows beneath her cheekbones. Her ribs pressed visibly against fabric with every shallow breath. Bare feet dangled inches above the damp earth toes, blue from cold and lack of circulation. Her head had fallen forward, long dark hair curtaining her face, hiding whatever expression, pain or exhaustion, had frozen there. Lily, still cradled against Jack's chest, let out a sound that was more animal than child, a high keening wail that sliced through the fog and lodged somewhere deep inside him. Jack's grip tightened reflexively. "Don't look," he repeated, quieter this time, voice steady, even as something inside him fractured. He turned her small face away, pressing her cheek against his shoulder. She obeyed without resistance, fingers curling into the wool of his coat like she might disappear if she let go. Her body shook in silent, exhausted sobs. She had screamed herself empty on the run. Mike reached Sarah first. He pressed 2 fingers against the side of her neck, feeling for the faint thread of life beneath icy skin. His jaw clenched once hard before he called back. "Alive. Barely. Pulse weak and thready. Hypothermia's bad. She's been up there hours." Jack did not acknowledge the relief that should have followed. Relief was dangerous. Its softened edges he needed sharp. He shifted Lily's weight and moved closer, eyes cataloging every detail with clinical detachment that masked the storm beneath. Rope burns circled Sarah's wrists like cruel bracelets, skin split and weeping. Bruises bloomed across her forearms, defensive marks from struggling. Her lips were cracked and bloodless. Faint purple tinged the edges. Beneath the dirt and pine needles matting her hair, faint lines of exhaustion etched permanent shadows under closed eyes. She looked like someone who had been running on empty for years, cold nights in a trailer with broken heat, skipped meals so Lily could eat double shifts at the diner until her feet bled inside worn sneakers. Poverty had whittled her down to bone and will, and now cruelty had tried to finish the job. Jack felt the old remorse rise like bile. He had seen this kind of suffering before, not in the polished violence of his world, but in the quiet, grinding kind that happened in trailer parks and back porches when no one important was watching. His sister had worn that same hollow look before the night she never came home. The memory hit like a blade between ribs, sharp twisting. He had been 14, powerless, watching the world take her because no one thought she mattered enough to protect. Now another small girl clung to him, trusting him to matter. "Cut her down," he said, voice flat. One of the men, Ricky, scaled the tree with the ease of someone who had climbed worse under worse conditions. Knife flashed. Rope parted with a soft sighing snap. Sarah's body dropped. Mike caught her with surprising gentleness, lowering her to the pine needle carpet. Immediately he checked vitals again, peeled back, eyelids felt for broken bones. Shock. Exposure. Possible dehydration. She needs warmth and fluids now. Jack set Lily on her feet but kept one hand on her shoulder. The child's swayed legs, trembling eyes locked on her mother's still form. She took one step forward, then froze, as though afraid movement might shatter the fragile thread keeping Sarah breathing. Jack crouched beside the unconscious woman for the first time. Up close, the disparity was brutal. His coat, Italian wool tailored worth more than Sarah's entire wardrobe, brushed the dirt beside her torn blouse. His watch, simple steel but Swiss-made, gleamed against skin that had known too many winters without heat. He reached out almost without thinking and brushed damp hair from her face. Her eyelids fluttered. A faint moan escaped cracked lips. Lily gasped. Mom Sarah's eyes opened hazel like her daughter's but clouded with pain and confusion. She tried to focus, failed, tried again. Her gaze found Lily first, relief instant and shattering, then slid past to the tall man kneeling beside her. Fear flashed across her features, raw and instinctive. She tried to shrink away, wrists pulling against remaining rope fragments, fresh blood welling. Jack raised both hands, palms open. "Easy. We're not the ones who did this." Her breathing hitched short, panicked. Voice, when it came, was barely a whisper cracked from hours of silence and cold. Who are you?" "Someone who stopped," he said simply. She searched his face, suspicion warring with exhaustion, terror warring with the smallest flicker of hope. Her eyes darted to the other men, to their dark coats and disciplined stillness, then back to Jack. Something in his stillness seemed to register, not safety exactly, but absence of immediate threat. Lily broke free of his hand and threw herself across her mother's chest, small arms wrapping as far as they could reach. Mom, they cut you down. He cut you down. You're okay now. You're okay. Sarah's arms, shaking weak, came up slowly, encircling her daughter. Tears slipped silently down dirt-streaked cheeks. She pressed lips to Lily's hair, murmuring broken apologies between sobs. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, baby. I couldn't. Jack stood, giving them space, but his eyes never left Sarah. Inside him, the conflict roared louder, now violent tearing. Why did this one matter? Why did the sight of her thin arms around her child rip open every scar? He thought, cauterized. He had money, power, men who answered to his name in 3 states. He could have driven past, should have driven past. Yet here he stood, chest tight, with something fiercer than guilt responsibility, sudden and absolute, the kind that burned. Not romantic, not possessive. Paternal in a way he had never permitted himself to feel since the night he failed his sister. This child had run to him. This woman had endured unimaginable cruelty and still reached for her daughter first. He turned to Mike. Get the thermal blankets from the kit. Fluids. Stabilize her enough to move. Mike nodded, already moving. Jack pulled out his phone, sleek encrypted cost more than Sarah's monthly rent, and made the call without looking at the screen. Medical team. Female mid-30s. Hypothermia rope, trauma shock. Safe house 30 minutes. Full discretion. No records. He ended the call, pocketed the device, and returned his attention to the clearing. Sarah was watching him now, eyes wide, guarded, curious beneath the fear. Her voice, when she spoke again, was soft, timid, the tone of someone accustomed to deference around men who held power over her. Why are you helping us? Jack met her gaze. For a long moment he said nothing. Then quietly, because she asked, he nodded toward Lily, who had curled against her mother's side, small hand clutching Sarah's bandaged wrist as though afraid to let go. Sarah swallowed. Tears welled again, but she blinked them back. We can't pay. I don't have anything. I'm not asking for payment. Her expression, fractured confusion, disbelief, the dawning terror of owing something to a stranger who looked like he could destroy worlds. Then what do you want? Jack felt the question like a punch. What did he want? Nothing, he told himself. Nothing at all. But the lie tasted bitter. He wanted the ache in his chest to stop. He wanted the memory of his sister's face to stop surfacing every time he looked at Lily. He wanted for one impossible moment to be the man who had been there when it mattered, instead of the one who arrived too late. He gave her the only answer he could. I want you both safe. Sarah stared at him, searching, weighing, deciding. Then slowly she nodded. Not trust, not yet, but surrender to the reality that she had no other choice. Mike returned with blankets, IV starter kit, chemical heat packs. They worked quickly, efficiently. Sarah winced as warm blankets wrapped around her. Color began creeping back into her lips. Lily refused to move from her side, even when Mike gently tried to check her own scrapes. Jack stepped back, watching the scene unfold, the tenderness of strangers caring for a woman and child they owed nothing to. Inside him, the storm reached fever pitch. Remorse clawed deeper, guilt twisted harder. He had built an empire on control, on never letting emotion dictate action. Yet here he stood, heart pounding, with something dangerously close to hope. Hope that he could protect them. Hope that protecting them might finally silence the voice that whispered night after night, "You failed her. You'll fail again." He turned away, scanning the tree line. Somewhere out there the men who had done this were still breathing. That would change soon. But first he would get these two to safety. He crouched beside Sarah again. We're moving you. My place. Doctors waiting. No hospitals, no questions. She looked up at him, dizzy, disoriented pain etching every line of her face. Your place safe, he said. That's all that matters right now. Lily lifted her head. He's good, Mom. He listened. He came. Sarah's eyes met her daughter's, then returned to Jack's. In that moment, something shifted inside her, small, fragile, but real. Not love. Not yet. But trust born of desperation and the simple fact that he had not walked away. Jack felt it hit him like a physical blow. He stood offering his hand to help her up. She hesitated, then took it. Her fingers were ice-cold, trembling. His were warm, steady. The contrast burned. They moved as a unit back toward the road, Jack carrying Sarah now, Lily clinging to his coat, Mike and the others forming protective perimeter. Fog swallowed them again, but this time it felt less like a shroud and more like cover. Behind them the oak stood silent, rope ends swaying gently. Ahead waited the SUV's black, gleaming symbols of a world Sarah had never touched. And inside Jack Callahan, the war raged on fiercer, louder, tearing him apart piece by piece. Because he had stopped. Because he had cared. And because, God help him, he knew he would never stop again. The mountain safe house sat high above the French Broad River Valley, a sprawling timber and stone structure disguised as an upscale vacation retreat. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked ridges that turned gold in October. Light but heavy drapes remained drawn against prying eyes. Inside, polished hardwood floors gleamed under recessed lighting. Leather sofas and wool rugs cost more than most people earned in a decade. A discreet medical suite occupied the east wing's sterile white walls, adjustable hospital bed monitors, humming softly beside trays of equipment that private clinics charged fortunes to use. Sarah Harper lay beneath heated blankets, ivy-lined, feeding warm saline and nutrients into a vein that stood out blue against translucent skin. Color had begun returning to her cheeks, but the hollows remained deep shadows carved by years of choosing between groceries and electricity, between rent and her daughter's school shoes. Her wrists, now wrapped in clean gauze, still throbbed with every heartbeat. She drifted in and out of consciousness each time, surfacing to the same disorienting reality: soft sheets instead of cracked vinyl, warmth instead of wind cutting through trailer walls, safety instead of the constant low-grade terror of eviction notices taped to the door. Lily refused to leave her side. The child sat cross-legged on the wide bed, small hand resting atop her mother's, watching the slow rise and fall of Sarah's chest, as though counting breaths might keep her anchored to life. Exhaustion had painted faint purple crescents beneath Lily's eyes, but she fought sleep with fierce determination. Every time her head nodded, she jerked upright, whispering apologies to no one in particular. Jack stood in the doorway, arms folded shoulder against the frame. He had changed into a plain black sweater and dark jeans, still expensive, still tailored, but the armor felt thinner now. Mike had left an hour earlier to coordinate with the team, sweeping the back roads for any sign of pursuit. The house was quiet, except for the soft beeps of monitors and the occasional creak of settling wood. He watched mother and daughter for a long moment. Something about the way Lily's fingers curled protectively around Sarah's thumb tore at him. Quiet, condensed stillness that amplified every buried ache. He had seen that same protective grip in his own childhood mirror, small hands clutching his sister's sleeve while their mother worked double shifts and their father drank the paycheck away. The memory arrived uninvited, sharp as broken glass, Sophia at 8, laughing one afternoon, gone the next, because no one powerful enough had cared to intervene. Jack pushed off the doorframe and stepped inside. His footsteps were deliberately soft on the rug. Lily's head snapped up. Her hazel eyes, wide, wary, hopeful, locked on him. "She's sleeping better," the child whispered, as though louder words might break the spell. Jack nodded once. He moved to the opposite side of the bed and lowered himself into the armchair the medical team had positioned there. Up close, the disparity struck harder. His watch caught the low light, simple, elegant, worth enough to replace every piece of furniture in Sarah's trailer twice over. Sarah's thin gold wedding band, long since pawned for heating oil, had left only a faint pale circle on her ring finger. He studied her face. Even unconscious, she carried tension, brow faintly furrowed, lips pressed thin. Poverty had etched permanent lines of worry around her eyes and mouth. Malnutrition had thinned her to fragility. Sleep deprivation had bruised the skin beneath her lashes. She had endured nights huddled under thin blankets, while wind howled through gaps in the trailer siding nights. When the propane ran out, and she wrapped Lily in every layer they owned, just to keep the child from shivering. And still she had worked waitress shifts, cleaning houses, anything that paid cash under the table, because the system offered no mercy to single mothers, with no family, no savings, no safety net. Jack felt the old remorse surge violent, now a storm inside his ribcage. He had money, liquid assets and accounts numbered in the millions, properties scattered across 3 states, influence that bent local law enforcement without a word. Yet he had spent decades building walls against exactly this, the vulnerability of the powerless, the guilt of surviving when others did not. Lily's small voice broke the silence. "You're staring." Jack blinked, caught. "I'm thinking." "About what?" He hesitated, rare for him. "About how long she's been carrying all of this alone." Lily looked down at her mother's hand. "She says we're okay. She always says we're okay. Even when the lights go out, or the fridge is empty, or the landlord yells." Her voice cracked on the last word. "She lies so I won't be scared." The confession landed like a stone in still water. Jack's throat tightened. Inside him something fractured, further remorse, twisting into something fiercer, more possessive. Not romantic, never that. But paternal primal, the kind of fierce attachment that burned through every rational barrier he had erected. He reached out slowly, slow enough for Lily to pull away if she wanted, and brushed a strand of hair from Sarah's forehead. His fingers lingered a heartbeat longer than necessary. Her skin felt fever-warm now, life returning. The contact sent a jolt through him, electric, unwelcome, undeniable. Lily watched the gesture without speaking. Then quietly, "You're different." Jack withdrew his hand. "Different how? You didn't leave. Everyone else does." The word struck deeper than any accusation. He had left figuratively, literally countless times. Walked away from scenes of suffering because involvement meant risk, meant weakness, meant opening doors he had nailed shut after Sophia. Yet here he sat, unable to walk away from this small family because one child had run straight to him and refused to let go. A soft knock at the door. Mike entered, expression grim. "Boss, lab results are back." Jack stood immediately. He followed Mike into the hallway, closing the bedroom door softly behind him. In the study, dark wood paneling, leather-bound books that had never been read. Mike handed him a slim folder. Inside a single sheet of paper, DNA comparison chart. Jack scanned it once, then again. The numbers aligned in perfect impossible symmetry. Lily Harper carried 23 chromosomes that matched his own. The room tilted. He braced one hand on the desk. Mike watched in silence, knew better than to speak. Jack stared at the paper as though it might change if he looked away. 9 years ago. A brief, reckless entanglement with a waitress in Charlotte during a stretch, when he thought he could outrun his own emptiness. She had disappeared shortly after. He had assumed she wanted nothing more to do with him. He had let her go because that was what he did. Let people go before they could matter. Now the proof sat in black and white. Lily was his daughter. The realization hit like a physical blow, chest caving, breath stolen. Guilt roared forward, ancient and fresh at once. He had failed Sophia because he was too young, too powerless. He had failed this child before she was even born, because he was too selfish, too afraid of attachment. Every cold night Sarah and Lily had endured, every skipped meal, every eviction threat, he could have stopped it. Should have known, should have looked. Violent conflict tore through him, remorse so sharp it felt like bleeding internally, anger at himself so fierce he wanted to put a fist through the wall. He had built an empire on control, yet he had lost control of the one thing that mattered most before it even began. Mike cleared his throat. What now? Jack folded the paper with deliberate care. His voice came out low, almost unrecognizable. Nothing changes on the surface. They stay here, protected. No one knows. And you, Jack, met his second-in-command's eyes. I figure out how to be what she needed 9 years ago. Back in the bedroom, Sarah had stirred. Her eyes opened, cloudy at first, then sharpening as she registered the room, the Ivy, the child beside her. Lily leaned close. Mom, he's still here. The man who saved us. Sarah turned her head slowly. Pain flashed across her, features physical, emotional. She tried to sit up. Dizziness forced her back against the pillows. Jack stepped closer. Don't move yet. Her gaze found his, guarded, fearful, but threaded now with something new, curiosity born of overwhelming gratitude. You're still here. I said I would be. She swallowed. Voice, soft, timid, polite, the tone of someone who had learned early that powerful men expected deference. I don't understand why. Jack hesitated. The truth burned on his tongue. Because she's mine. Because I failed her before I even knew her name. Because every breath she takes is a debt I can never repay. Instead, he said, because you both matter. Sarah's eyes filled. She looked away, blinking rapidly. No one's ever said that to us before. The quiet admission shattered something inside him. He crouched beside the bed so their eyes were level. They should have. Lily reached across her mother to touch Jack's sleeve. You're staying. He looked at the child, his child, and felt the attachment ignite, passionate and burning, fierce enough to consume every doubt. Yes, he said. I'm staying. Sarah watched the exchange, confusion deepening into something closer to wonder. A poor woman, powerless and broken, suddenly held in the regard of a man who could buy cities. The disparity crushed her, his wealth on display in every detail of the room, her poverty etched into every line of her body. Yet here he knelt, not demanding, not judging, simply present. Tears slipped free. She whispered, "Thank you." Jack felt the words sear through him, gratitude he did not deserve, trust he had not earned. Inside the storm raged harder remorse for years, lost determination to protect what remained, violent conflict between the man he had been and the father he might still become. Outside the October, wind moved through the pines. Inside, a family fractured, found fragile, began to mend. The safe-house kitchen gleamed under soft, under-cabinet lighting, marble counters veined in silver stainless appliances that hummed with quiet efficiency, a double oven large enough to feed a small army. Copper pots hung in orderly rows above the island. A bowl of fresh apples sat in the center, red and perfect, untouched. The scent of brewing coffee mingled with the faint cedar from the open beam ceiling. It was the kind of kitchen magazines featured in aspirational spreads, beautiful, expensive, rarely used for anything as ordinary as family meals. Lily sat at the island on a tall stool, legs swinging, small hands wrapped around a mug of hot chocolate piled high with marshmallows. The drink had been Mike's idea, something warm, something sweet, something to anchor a child who had run barefoot through fog and terror only hours earlier. She sipped carefully, eyes never straying far from the hallway that led to her mother's room. The door opened quietly. Tommy Ruiz slipped inside sneakers, silent on the hardwood. 9 years old, skinny as a fence post, dark hair falling into wary brown eyes. His hoodie was 2 sizes too big, cuffs frayed, jeans patched at the knees from too many falls on gravel lots. He had been hiding in the woods near the clearing when Lily ran for help, too frightened to follow, too loyal to leave entirely. When the convoy returned, Lily had spotted him at the tree line and begged Jack to bring him too. Jack had not hesitated. Now Tommy stood just inside the doorway, shoulders hunched, gaze darting from marble to copper, to the man leaning against the far counter. Jack wore a simple black sweater, sleeves pushed to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and faded ink. He held a coffee mug, ceramic hand-thrown, worth more than the monthly rent Sarah had struggled to pay, but his posture was deliberately non-threatening, arms loose at his sides. Tommy's eyes narrowed. "You're the one with the guns." Jack set the mug down without haste. "I'm the one who brought your friend and her mom here." Tommy took one step forward, then stopped. "Lily says you're good." "I don't believe her." Lily spun on the stool. "Tommy, no." The boy's voice cracked with the fierceness only children can summon when protecting what little they have left. "He's rich. Rich guys like him hurt people like us. They take what they want, then throw you away when they're done. My mom says so. My mom says never trust a man in a nice coat." Jack felt the words land like stones against old bruises. He had heard variations of that warning his entire life from people who had every reason to believe it. He had become the warning. Yet hearing it from a child, small, hungry, already too familiar with betrayal, cut deeper than any rival's threat. He kept his voice even. "Your mom's right to be careful, but I didn't bring you here to take anything." Tommy's lip curled. "Then why?" "Because Lily asked. And because no one should be left in the cold." The boy stared at him, searching, suspicious, defiant. Then his gaze flicked to Lily. She looked back with wide, pleading eyes. "He saved Mom," she whispered. "He carried her. He didn't leave us." Tommy's shoulders sagged a fraction. He took another step into the room but stayed close to the door, escape route always in sight. Jack pushed a second mug of hot chocolate across the island. "Sit if you want. Or stand. Your choice." Tommy hesitated. Hunger won. He crossed the distance in quick, wary strides and climbed onto the stool beside Lily. His hands shook slightly as he wrapped them around the mug. The first sip left chocolate on his upper lip. He wiped it away with the back of his sleeve, embarrassed. Lily reached over and squeezed his arm. "See, it's okay." Tommy shot Jack another look, still guarded, still measuring. "You got a lot of guys with guns outside." "I do." Why? Jack met the boy's eyes without flinching. "Because the world isn't always kind to people who need help." Tommy snorted softly, a sound too old for 9. "Tell me something I don't know." Silence settled, thick, condensed, heavy with unspoken histories. Jack watched the 2 children, Lily small and trusting, Tommy sharp-edged and wounded. The contrast to his own childhood struck hard, Sophia laughing in a sunlit yard one day, gone the next, because no one with power had bothered to look. He had sworn then, silently, furiously, that if he ever gained that power, he would use it differently. Now here were 2 more children, one his by blood he had not known existed, the other bound to her by loyalty deeper than kinship. The responsibility pressed against his ribs until breathing hurt. Outside, tires crunched on gravel. Jack straightened instantly. Mike appeared in the doorway, expression tight. "Boss, trouble on the lower road. 3 vehicles, blacked out sedans. They're circling the access points. Not locals." Jack's jaw tightened. Harlan Wade's crew already sniffing for retaliation. He had expected it, but not this soon. "Secure the perimeter," he said quietly. "No engagement unless they force it. I want eyes on every approach." Mike nodded and vanished. Lily's eyes widened. "Are they coming for us?" Jack turned back to the children. "Not if I can help it." Tommy slid off the stool. "You gonna fight them, if I have to?" The boy studied him long, hard. Then, unexpectedly, "Don't get killed. Lily needs you." The simple statement hit Jack like a fist to the sternum. He nodded once only because anything more would crack the control he clung to. He moved toward the door, then paused. "Stay here. Both of you. Don't move until someone you know comes for you." Lily nodded. Tommy did not. Jack stepped into the hallway. The safe house had gone quiet, professional quiet, the kind that preceded violence. He pulled on a dark coat, wool-lined, worth a month of Sarah's wages, and checked the pistol at his hip. Not for show, for necessity. Downstairs in the security room, monitors glowed with feeds from hidden cameras. 3 vehicles idled at the base of the private drive engines, low lights off. Men inside, silhouettes only. Waiting, watching. Jack felt the old instincts rise, cold calculation overlaying the fire in his chest. These men had hung Sarah from a tree. They had forced a child to run for her life. They had no right to breathe the same air as Lily. He turned to Mike. "Call the secondary team. Flank them from the ridge. No shots unless they advance." Mike hesitated. You sure you don't want to wait them out? Jack's voice dropped. I'm done waiting for people like them to decide who lives and who suffers. He stepped outside. The October night bit sharp wind moving through pines, carrying the scent of resin and coming frost. Jack walked down the drive alone, deliberately visible. Headlights snapped on as he approached. Doors opened. 4 men stepped out rough, scarred, carrying themselves like men accustomed to fear. The leader, broad-bearded snake tattoo curling around his left wrist, spoke first. You the one who cut her down? Jack stopped 10 feet away, hands loose at his sides. I am. The man smiled, thin, ugly. Harlan don't like loose ends. Jack's expression never changed. Then tell Harlan the loose ends just got tighter. Tension crackled, electric suspended. One of the men shifted hand, drifting toward a jacket pocket. Jack's voice cut through the night, low and final. Don't! The hand froze. Jack took 1 step forward. You have 2 choices. Drive away now, or learn what happens when you come for people under my protection. The leader laughed short, nervous. You think you're untouchable. I think you're out of your depth. Silence stretched. Wind moved through the trees. Somewhere above, an owl called once sharp, lonely. The leader's eyes flicked to the ridge. Shadows moved there, Jack's men positioned patient. He spat on the gravel. This ain't over. Jack's voice remained calm. It is for tonight. The men backed toward their vehicles, slow, grudging. Engines started. Taillights flared red, then receded down the mountain. Jack stood motionless until the sound faded entirely. Inside him, the conflict roared. Louder remorse for the life he had built on threats and power. Fierce protectiveness for the children upstairs. Violent determination to end any threat to them. He had stopped being a bystander the moment Lily ran into his path. There was no going back. He returned to the kitchen. Lily and Tommy still sat at the island. Tommy's mug was empty. Lily's marshmallows had melted into foam. Jack leaned against the doorway. They're gone. Tommy met his eyes, wary still, but the edge had softened fractionally. You didn't shoot anybody. No. Why not? Jack considered the question. Because some messages don't need bullets. Lily slid off her stool and crossed to him. She stopped just short, looking up. You're staying right. Like you said. Jack crouched so their eyes were level. The attachment burned fierce, paternal, consuming. I'm staying. She threw her arms around his neck. Small, trusting, absolute. Tommy watched, silent, conflicted. Then quietly, if you hurt her, I'll find a way to make you sorry. Jack looked over Lily's shoulder at the boy. Fair enough. In that moment, quiet, condensed, heavy with unspoken promises, the bond between the 3 of them tightened. Outside, the wind continued. Inside, something fragile and fierce began to grow. The safe house had fallen into an uneasy hush after the midnight standoff on the lower road. Moonlight filtered through gaps in the heavy drapes, painting silver stripes across the master bedroom floor. Sarah lay propped against pillows, the IV stand beside her, casting long skeletal shadows on the wall. The heated blanket draped over her thin frame hummed softly, its warmth a luxury she still flinched from, as though too much comfort might vanish the moment she believed in it. Her wrists, bandaged now in fresh white gauze, throbbed in time with her pulse. Every breath pulled at muscles that had screamed for hours while she hung suspended from that oak branch. Lily slept, curled against her side, small fist clutching the edge of Sarah's hospital gown. Tommy had refused to leave either. He sat on the rug beside the bed, back against the frame, knees drawn to his chest, eyes open and watchful in the dim light. He had not spoken since Jack returned from the driveway confrontation, but the tension in his narrow shoulders said enough. Sarah stared at the ceiling, mind spinning in dizzy loops. Shock still numbed the edges of everything. Horror at what had been done to her, confusion at where she now lay, fear that this fragile safety would shatter like every other promise life had ever made her. She had spent so many nights shivering under a single quilt, while wind howled through cracks in the trailer walls, so many mornings waking with hunger cramps because the last of the cereal went to Lily. Now she was surrounded by softness. She could not trust Egyptian cotton sheets that cost more than her monthly rent, a room larger than her entire living space, doctors who came and went without asking for insurance cards. The disparity pressed against her chest until breathing hurt. She turned her head slightly. Jack stood just inside the doorway, silent sentinel arms, folded face, half in shadow. He had not left the wing since the children fell asleep. His presence filled the room without effort, tall, broad-shouldered, fair-skinned, the quiet authority of a man who commanded rooms simply by entering them. The black sweater he wore had been custom-made. The watch on his wrist caught stray moonlight and threw it back in tiny sparks. Wealth radiated from him in every detail, yet he stood motionless as though afraid movement might frighten them. Sarah's voice came out small, cracked. You don't have to stay. Jack's gaze shifted to her. I know. Then why? He did not answer immediately. Inside him, the storm had grown, teeth gnawing remorse, sharpened to razor points by the DNA results still burning a hole in his pocket. Every time he looked at Lily, he saw his own failure replayed in miniature 9 years of absence, 9 years of nights she and Sarah had endured alone, while he built walls of money and power to keep the world at bay. The guilt was violent now, a living thing clawing at his ribs. He wanted to confess, wanted to drop to his knees and beg forgiveness for sins she did not yet know he had committed. But the words stayed locked behind clenched teeth. Telling her now would only add terror to trauma. Instead, he said, "Because you're not safe yet." Sarah swallowed. "Those men, they'll come back. They already tried." Her eyes widened. Fresh fear bloomed across her face. Dizzying, nauseating. When? An hour ago. Down the access road. They left. She tried to sit up straighter. Pain lanced through her shoulders. She gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Tommy jerked awake at the sound. "Mom, I'm okay," Sarah whispered, though her voice shook. "Go back to sleep, sweetheart." Tommy did not move. His gaze flicked to Jack, accusing protective. Jack stepped closer to the bed. "They won't get near the house." Sarah searched his face. "How can you be sure? Because I don't allow second chances." The words hung between them, heavy final. Sarah felt a shiver that had nothing to do with cold. This man had ended threats before. She could see it in the stillness of his posture, the calm certainty in his eyes. Yet he knelt now beside her bed with the gentleness of someone afraid to break glass. Lily stirred, blinking sleepily. "Mr. Jack, I'm here." The child reached out. Jack caught her small hand without hesitation. The contact sent another jolt through him, fierce paternal burning. He squeezed gently, thumb brushing over fragile knuckles. Sarah watched the exchange. Something inside her cracked open suspicion, giving way to overwhelming, confusing trust. No one had ever looked at her daughter that way, protective, tender, absolute. No one had ever looked at her that way either. The realization numbed her violent in its intensity. She had spent years invisible, powerless, enduring humiliation after humiliation, landlords leering while demanding late rent customers leaving no tip. After she smiled through exhaustion nights when the power company cut the line, and she just rocked Lily in the dark to keep her from crying. Now a stranger, wealthy, dangerous, powerful, stood guard over them, as though they were precious. Tears slipped free before she could stop them. Jack noticed immediately. "What is it?" She shook her head, voice trembling. "I don't know how to be worth this." "You don't have to earn it." The simplicity of the statement shattered her. She pressed a hand to her mouth, muffling a sob. Tommy scooted closer, wrapping thin arms around her waist. Jack felt the moment like a physical wound, his own heart tearing wider. He had failed his sister because he was too young. He had failed Lily before she drew breath because he was too selfish. Now every protective instinct he possessed roared to life, fierce and consuming. He would burn the world before he let anyone touch them again. A soft chime broke the stillness, Mike's encrypted phone in the hallway. Jack stood. "Stay here." He stepped into the corridor. Mike waited, face grim. "They're back. Not at the gate this time. Service road 2 miles out. 4 men on foot. Armed. Moving quiet." Jack's jaw locked. "How long?" 10 minutes if they keep pace. Maybe less. "Get the children and Sarah to the panic room. Now." Mike moved without question. Jack returned to the bedroom. Sarah had already sensed the shift. Her face paled. "What's happening?" Company Jack said quietly. "We're moving you." Fear flashed across her features, raw, visceral. She tried to stand. Legs buckled. Jack caught her before she fell, strong arms encircling her waist with careful strength. "I've got you." She clung to him instinctively, thin fingers curling into his sweater. The contact seared them both, her terror meeting his determination in a single burning point. Tommy scooped Lily into his arms. "Come on, Lil. We gotta go." They moved quickly, Jack carrying Sarah, Mike, leading the way down a concealed hallway. The panic room door, steel seamless, opened at Mike's touch. Inside reinforced walls, monitors, supplies a small medical station. Safe. Temporary. Jack set Sarah on the low couch. She trembled violently now, shock, compounding shock. Lily crawled into her lap. Tommy pressed against her other side. Jack crouched in front of them. "You stay here. No one gets through that door." Sarah's voice broke. "Don't go out there. I have to." Her hand shot out, grabbed his wrist. Cold fingers against warm skin. "Please." The plea nearly undid him. Inside, remorse and protectiveness collided in violent waves, guilt for bringing danger to their door, fierce need to eliminate it forever. He covered her hand with his own. "I'll come back." She searched his eyes, desperate pleading. Then she nodded, small trembling. Jack stood, looked at Lily. "Keep your mom safe." The child nodded solemnly. He turned to leave. The The moment the steel door sealed behind him, Sarah pressed her face into Lily's hair and wept, quiet, wrenching sobs that tore through the small room. Outside, Jack moved through darkened corridors like shadow. Monitors showed 4 figures advancing through the pines, black-clad rifles slung low. Harlan Wade's men. Persistent, stupid. He met his team at the tree line, silent, disciplined. No words needed. They waited. The first man stepped into moonlight. Jack stepped forward alone. "You're trespassing." The man froze. "Harlan wants the woman." "And the kid." Jack's voice dropped to ice. "They're not his to take." Tension crackled, electric lethal. The other 3 fanned out. Jack did not draw. "Not yet. You have 1 chance," he said. "Walk away." The leader laughed, short, ugly. Or what Jack's answer was quiet. Final. "Or you don't walk at all." Silence stretched thin, dangerous. Then gunfire cracked sharp, sudden from the ridge. Not Jack's men. Ambush within ambush. Pain bloomed in Jack's shoulder, hot, searing. He staggered but did not fall. Chaos erupted. Shouts, muzzle flashes, controlled bursts from his team returning fire. Jack dropped to one knee, blood soaking wool. He forced himself upright, pistol drawn now, steady, despite the fire in his arm. One of the attackers rushed him, knife gleaming. Jack sidestepped, caught the wrist, twisted. Bone snapped. The man screamed. Another charged. Jack fired once, center mass. The man dropped. The leader hesitated, eyes wide. Jack leveled the pistol. Blood dripped steadily onto pine needles. "Tell Harlan," he said through clenched teeth. "The debt just doubled." The remaining men broke, running into darkness. Jack stood motionless until the forest swallowed them. Then he sank to one knee, breath ragged, vision blurring. Mike reached him first. "Boss, get me inside," Jack rasped. "Before the kids see." They half carried him back. In the panic room, Sarah heard the commotion. Terror clawed up her throat. When the door opened and Jack staggered in blood, soaking his sweater face pale, she cried out, "Jack!" He sank onto the couch beside her. Lily threw herself against him. Tommy stared wide-eyed. Sarah reached for him, hands shaking. "You're hurt. It's through and through," he managed. "I'll live." Tears streamed down her face. "You didn't have to. I did." She pressed trembling fingers to the wound, useless gesture, desperate. The contrast crushed her thin, malnourished hands against his powerful frame, her helplessness against his sacrifice. Jack caught her wrist gently. "I'm okay." She shook her head, violent denial. "You almost weren't." The room fell silent, condensed, heavy. Jack looked at Lily, his daughter, then at Sarah. Inside him, the storm reached crescendo remorse for every year lost fierce protectiveness that burned hotter than the bullet wound, violent determination to end this threat forever. He pulled them close, Sarah, Lily, Tommy, into the circle of his arms despite the pain. No one spoke. Outside, the October wind moved through empty pines. Inside, a family, bloodied, fragile, unbreakable, held together for the first time. Dawn crept over the Blue Ridge Mountains in pale October light, turning the fog outside the safe house windows to soft gold. Inside the medical suite, the air smelled of antiseptic fresh linen and the faint metallic tang of blood. Jack lay on the adjustable bedshirt, cutaway shoulder bandaged in thick white gauze that already showed faint pink at the center. The bullet had passed clean through, painful, messy, but not fatal. The doctor, a discreet private physician who asked no questions and accepted cash in envelopes, had cleaned, stitched, and left with instructions for rest and antibiotics. Jack had ignored every word about rest. He sat propped against pillows, now bare-chested, except for the bandages, fair skin marked by old scars that told stories he never shared. The room's luxury pressed in around him, silk thread sheets, a walnut nightstand holding crystal water glasses, recessed lighting that cost more to install than most families earned in a year. Yet none of it touched the raw ache in his chest deeper than the bullet wound. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed beside him, thin fingers trembling as she held a damp cloth against his forehead. She had insisted on helping despite her own weakness, wrists still raw, body still shaking from shock and hypothermia. Her hospital gown hung loose on a frame made fragile by years of hunger. Collarbones stood out sharp beneath pale skin, ribs faintly visible when she moved. Malnutrition had stolen softness from her cheeks long ago. Sleep deprivation had carved permanent shadows beneath her eyes. She had spent too many winters wrapped in thrift store blankets, while wind sliced through single-pane windows too many nights, lying awake, calculating how many shifts she could take before collapsing. Now she tended a man who owned private jets and mountain estates, her touch hesitant, reverent, terrified of causing pain. "You should be resting," Jack said quietly. His voice carried the roughness of pain and exhaustion. Sarah shook her head. "I can't. Not while you're bleeding because of us. It wasn't because of you." Her eyes filled sudden, overwhelming. "It was. Those men came for me. For Lily. You took the bullet meant for." Her voice cracked. She pressed the cloth harder against his skin as though pressure could erase guilt. Jack caught her wrist gently, his large hand engulfing hers. "Stop!" She froze. Tears slipped free anyway, tracing silent paths down, cheeks still smudged with yesterday's dirt. Tommy and Lily sat on the rug nearby, Tommy cross-legged, drawing on a legal pad with borrowed markers. Lily curled against his side head on his shoulder. They had refused to leave the room since the doctor finished. Every few minutes, Lily glanced up, eyes wide with worry. She tried to hide behind small smiles. Jack looked at them, his daughter and her chosen brother, and felt the storm inside him reach new violence. Remorse clawed deeper. 9 years of absence, 9 years of Sarah scraping by on minimum wage and food bank canned goods, while he signed multi-million-dollar deals in glass-walled offices. The injustice burned absurd, cruel, humiliating in its unfairness. She had endured evictions taped to doors at dawn, utility shutoffs that left them eating cold beans by flashlight nights, when Lily cried from hunger and Sarah rocked her until both fell asleep from exhaustion. And he, wealthy, powerful, untouchable, had known nothing. He pulled Sarah closer despite the pain in his shoulder. She resisted for a heartbeat, then let herself be drawn in, forehead resting against his uninjured one. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "Any of it. You deserve safety," he answered. "You deserve warmth. You deserve someone who stays." The words landed like stones in still water. Sarah's breath hitched. She lifted her head, searching his face, confusion warring with desperate hope. "Why do you care?" Her voice was soft, timid, polite, the tone of someone who had learned early that powerful men expected deference, not questions. Jack hesitated. The truth pressed against his ribs, fierce, burning paternal love for the child he had not known existed, fierce protectiveness for the woman who had carried her alone. He could not say it yet, not while she still looked at him like a debt she could never repay. Instead, he said, "Because no one protected you when you needed it. I won't make the same mistake." Sarah's tears fell faster. She pressed the cloth to his wound again, gentle, careful. "You're hurt because of me. I'm alive because of you." He covered her hand with his own. "You kept her safe all these years. You kept her kind. That matters more than a bullet." Lily looked up from the drawing. "Mom's the best at keeping people safe." Sarah managed a watery smile. "Not lately." Tommy spoke without looking up from his paper. "You tried. That's more than most do." The room fell quiet, condensed emotional stillness that amplified every heartbeat. Jack reached out with his good arm. Lily crawled onto the bed, careful of the bandages. She tucked herself against his side, small, trusting, warm. Tommy hesitated, then followed, perching on the edge like he still expected to be sent away. Sarah watched them, her daughter nestled against a man who could buy cities, her daughter's best friend slowly lowering his guard. The contrast crushed her anew. Her thin arms that had once carried Lily through blizzards without coats, now resting beside Jack's powerful frame. Her cracked lips that had kissed fevered foreheads in freezing trailers, now close to the man who owned heated floors and private security. She leaned forward slowly, painfully, and pressed her forehead to Jack's shoulder. Not romantic, never that. Gratitude so deep it hurt, trust so overwhelming it terrified. Jack closed his eyes. The attachment burned hotter, paternal, fierce, absolute. He wrapped his good arm around the three of them, Sarah, Lily, Tommy, holding them against the storm inside him. Remorse roared louder for every cold night Sarah had endured, every skipped meal, every humiliating plea to landlords and bill collectors. Violent conflict tore through him, anger at himself for failing them before he knew them, determination to rewrite every injustice. Outside, the October sun climbed higher. Inside, healing began, not with medicine but with quiet acts. Sarah dabbing antiseptic on his stitches with shaking hands. Lily tracing gentle patterns on his uninjured arm. Tommy offering awkward, fierce loyalty in silence. Hours passed in fragments. Sarah spoke softly while changing the bandage, voice timid, polite. "I used to dream of a place like this. Warm. Safe. I thought it was impossible." Jack watched her fingers work, careful, precise despite pain. "It's yours now. As long as you want it." She paused. Tears welled again. "I don't know how to accept that." "You don't have to accept it today. Just let it be." She nodded, small, trembling. Tommy looked up. "You really mean that? We can stay." Jack met the boy's eyes. "I mean it." Tommy swallowed hard. Then quietly he reached out and touched Jack's wrist. "Brief. Grateful." Lily whispered against Jack's chest. "You're like a dad." The words struck like lightning, painful, perfect. Jack's throat closed. He pressed lips to her hair, gentle, reverent. "I'm trying to be." Sarah watched the exchange. Something inside her shattered, violent, numbing joy mixed with terror. This powerful man, wealth radiating from every detail of the room, treated her daughter like treasure, treated her like someone who mattered. She leaned closer, forehead against his again. "Thank you," she breathed, "for seeing us." Jack's voice cracked, rare, raw. I see you. I've always seen you. I was just too late. The confession hung between them, heavy healing. Outside, wind moved through pines. Inside, wounds physical and otherwise began to close. Jack held them tighter despite the pain in his shoulder. He would protect them. He would heal them. And God help him, he would spend every remaining day making up for the years he had lost. 3 days passed in the safe house like time held in fragile suspension. October light slanted through high windows in long golden bars across the polished floors, warming rooms that had once felt too large, too cold. The medical suite had become a quiet sanctuary, monitors silenced now that vitals had stabilized. IV stands rolled away, replaced by trays of simple food, fresh fruit, warm broth, soft bread, that Sarah still approached with hesitant fingers as, though expecting it to vanish. Jack moved more slowly than usual, shoulders stiff beneath fresh bandages, but he refused to stay in bed. He walked the halls at dawn, checked security feeds at midnight, stood guard outside the children's temporary bedroom, even when exhaustion pulled at his edges. His wealth surrounded them in every detail, the Egyptian cotton sheets Sarah now slept between the cashmere throw draped over Lily's shoulders, when she napped the heated bathroom floors that made Tommy stop in the doorway every morning, toes curling in disbelief. Sarah watched him from the doorway of the living room one late afternoon. Jack sat on the wide leather sofa. Lily curled against his good side, reading aloud from a picture book about forest animals. Tommy perched on the armrest closer than he had been willing to come even yesterday, pretending to look at his own comic but listening to every word. Sarah's throat tightened. She leaned against the frame, arms wrapped around her thin middle, as though holding herself together. The gown had been replaced by soft loungewear from the house's guest wardrobe, silk blend pants, and a long-sleeved top that felt impossibly luxurious against skin, still marked by rope burns and old bruises. She had not worn anything new in years. Thrift store finds and hand-me-downs had been her uniform. Now every thread reminded her of the chasm between her life before and this impossible present. Jack glanced up. Their eyes met across the room, quiet, condensed stillness that carried weight neither could name. He closed the book gently. "Lily, why don't you and Tommy see if Mike has any of those cookies left in the kitchen?" Lily slid off the sofa, tugging Tommy's sleeve. "Come on." He hides the chocolate ones behind the cereal. Tommy hesitated, eyes flicking from Jack to Sarah, then followed. When the door clicked shut, Sarah crossed the room on unsteady legs. She stopped in front of Jack, hands clasped tight in front of her. "I need to talk to you," she said softly. Voice timid, polite, still carrying the deference of someone who had spent years invisible. Jack gestured to the cushion beside him. "Sit." She did carefully, as though afraid to disturb the leather. Her thin frame barely made an impression on the deep seat. "I've been thinking," she began, "about everything. About how you look at Lily. At me." She swallowed. "I don't understand it, but I feel it. And Tommy," her voice cracked, "he's starting to believe you won't hurt us. That terrifies me more than anything." Jack waited, silent, attentive. Sarah's fingers twisted together. "He's never trusted anyone outside the two of us. Not really. His mom, she's been in and out of hospitals, foster homes when she couldn't manage. He learned early that adults with power only bring pain." Tears welled. "And now he's watching you, waiting for the moment you prove him right." Jack felt the words like a fresh wound. Inside him, remorse surged, violent tearing mixed with fierce protectiveness that burned hotter every hour. He had failed his own sister because no one with means had stepped in. He had failed Lily for 9 years because he had never looked. Now another child, small, wounded, fiercely loyal, waited for him to fail again. "I won't," he said quietly. Sarah searched his face. "How do I know that?" "You don't," he answered honestly. "Not yet, but I'll prove it every day until you do." Silence stretched, thick, heavy. Sarah whispered, "He needs something real. Not promises. Something he can hold on to when the fear comes back." Jack nodded once. That evening after dinner, simple roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. The children had never tasted so fresh. Jack disappeared into his study. He emerged 20 minutes later with a plain manila envelope. He found Tommy in the hallway outside the kitchen, leaning against the wall, arms crossed like armor. Jack crouched to his level. "This is for you." Tommy eyed the envelope warily. "What is it? Open it." The boy took it slowly, fingers trembling despite himself. Inside a single sheet of paper, official letterhead from a Charlotte medical center. Tommy's mother's name at the top. Below it, paid in full outstanding balance, followed by a list of procedures, medications, hospital stays. The total 6 figures marked 0. Tommy stared. Breath caught. Jack spoke quietly. "Your mom's care is covered. No more bills. No more collections. She gets the best doctors, private room, whatever she needs. And there's an apartment waiting, furnished, secure rent, paid for 2 years. She can focus on getting stronger." Tommy's eyes filled sudden, furious tears. Why? Because you're part of this now. Because no child should watch his mother suffer when there's something that can be done. The boy's shoulders shook. He looked up, searching Jack's face for the catch, the lie. There was none. Tommy crumpled the paper against his chest. A sob broke free, raw, wrenching. He threw himself forward, thin arms wrapping around Jack's neck. Jack froze for a heartbeat, then wrapped his good arm around the boy, careful of the stitches. Tommy cried against his shoulder, fierce, silent sobs that spoke of years of holding everything in. Sarah appeared in the doorway, Lily beside her. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears streaming. Tommy pulled back, red-eyed, fierce. You didn't have to do that. I know. But you did. Jack nodded once. Tommy wiped his face with his sleeve. Then quiet, almost inaudible, I was wrong about you. Jack's throat closed. You had every reason to be. Tommy looked at Sarah, then back at Jack. You're not going to leave us, are you? No. The boy swallowed hard. Okay. He stepped back, awkward, embarrassed, but the armor had cracked. Trust, fragile newborn, began to grow. Later that night, after the children slept, Sarah found Jack on the terrace overlooking the valley. Moonlight silvered the ridges. Wind moved soft through pines. She wrapped a cashmere throw around her shoulders, another gift she still could not believe was hers, and stood beside him. He cried, she said softly. I've never seen him cry like that. Not since he was little. Jack stared into the darkness. He's been carrying too much. So have I. Her voice trembled. So have you. He turned to her. Moonlight caught the faint scars on his chest. Old wounds, old stories. Sarah reached out hesitant, then rested her palm against his uninjured shoulder. You gave him back his mother. You gave Lily a father she never knew she had. You gave me hope. Real hope. After years of none, Jack covered her hand with his own. The contact burned paternal, protective, absolute. I should have been here sooner. You're here now. The words landed like absolution. Sarah leaned her forehead against his chest, careful of the bandage. I don't know how to thank you. You already have. She pulled back eyes, searching his. By trusting you, by letting me stay. Tears slipped free again. She whispered, then stay. Jack wrapped his good arm around her, gentle, steady. Sarah melted against him, thin frame, trembling with relief so deep it hurt. Inside him, the storm reached its peak remorse. For every lost year, fierce love for the family fate had returned to him, violent determination to shield them from every shadow that remained. He pressed lips to her hair, brief, reverent. I'm not going anywhere. Outside, the October night held its breath. Inside, a turning point arrived, not with fanfare, but with quiet, tear-soaked trust. Tommy's heart had shifted. And so had theirs. The October sky over Asheville had turned the color of old steel by late afternoon, clouds hanging low and heavy with the promise of rain that refused to fall. Jack drove one of the unmarked black SUVs down the winding two-lane road that led into the industrial edge of the city alone this time. No convoy, no backup visible. Just him, the engine's low growl, and the weight of decisions made in silence during the small hours when pain from his shoulder kept sleep at bay. He had not told Sarah where he was going. She had asked softly, timidly, when he kissed Lily's forehead and told the children he would be back before dark. He had answered only business that needs finishing. Her eyes had searched his face, fearful, trusting, still learning the shape of this new reality, and she had nodded once, small fingers tightening around Lily's hand. Now the road narrowed, flanked by rusting, chain-link fences and warehouses with broken windows like missing teeth. Harlan Wade operated out of a nondescript brick building at the end of a dead-end street fronted by a shell company that claimed to deal in salvage metal. Jack knew better. He knew the back rooms where ledgers were kept in code, where desperate people signed away futures for emergency cash at rates that ensured they never escaped. He parked 50 yards short of the entrance, killed the engine, and stepped out. The air smelled of diesel and wet concrete. Two men lounged near the loading dock, cigarettes glowing, eyes narrowing as Jack approached on foot. One straightened. You lost friend. Jack stopped 10 feet away, hands loose at his sides. I'm here to see Harlan. The second man laughed short, ugly. Harlan, don't take walk-ins. Jack's voice remained even. He'll take this one. Tension crackled, electric immediate. The first man's hand drifted toward his belt. Jack did not flinch. Tell him Jack Callahan is outside. Tell him we're settling accounts. The name landed like a stone dropped in still water. Recognition flickered across both faces. Fear beneath bravado. The second man disappeared inside. 30 seconds later, the metal door rolled up. Harlan Wade stepped out, mid-40s, heavy build, beginning to soften expensive watch on a thick wrist that clashed with the cheap polo shirt. His eyes, small, calculating, locked on Jack. You got balls coming here alone. Jack did not smile. I don't need company for this conversation. Harlan gestured to the open door. Inside. Jack followed slow, deliberate. The interior smelled of motor oil and stale coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. 2 more men waited in the shadows near a cluttered office at the back, hands near concealed weapons. Harlan sat behind a metal desk piled with papers. Jack remained standing. You cut down my message, Harlan began. Then you shot up my crew. That's bad for business. Jack's voice stayed calm. Hanging a woman from a tree because she fell behind on a $3,000 debt is worse for business. Harlan leaned back. She stole. Rules are rules. She didn't steal. She got sick. Missed shifts. You know the difference. Harlan's smile thinned. Doesn't matter. Example had to be made. Jack took 1 step forward. The example ends tonight. The room tensed. Hands moved toward guns. Jack ignored them. I have recordings every call you made, ordering the punishment, every payment to the men who carried it out. Names, dates, amounts. Enough to bury you under federal charges for years. Harlan's face hardened. You think I'm scared of paper. I think you're scared of consequences. Jack pulled a small drive from his pocket and set it on the desk. That's a copy. The original is already with people who don't answer to me. If anything happens to Sarah or the children or to me, the files go live. Every agency, every news outlet, your entire operation. Silence stretched thick, suffocating. Harlan stared at the drive, then at Jack. You're bluffing. Test me. One of the men shifted hand, inching toward a holster. Jack's voice dropped. Don't. The hand froze. Harlan exhaled through his nose. What do you want? Close the books. Every debt you hold on people like Sarah forgiven. No collections. No threats. You walk away from the loan business entirely. You keep the salvage front if you want. But the rest ends. Harlan laughed, bitter, disbelieving. You think you can dictate terms here? I already have. Another long silence. Harlan looked at his men, then back at Jack. You're asking me to gut my income. I'm telling you to keep breathing. The words hung final cold. Harlan's jaw worked. Pride warred with survival. Survival won. He reached for the drive slowly. Jack did not stop him. Fine, Harlan said. Debts wiped. Operations done. Happy Jack did not answer. He turned toward the door. Behind him, one of the men moved, sudden, desperate. Jack spun pistol already in hand. The shot cracked once into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. The man froze mid-step. Jack's voice remained calm. Next one goes through someone. No one moved. Jack backed toward the exit eyes, never leaving Harlan's face. At the threshold he paused. If I hear one whisper that you've gone back to old habits, if one person like Sarah gets touched again, I will end you. Quietly. Completely. And no one will look for the body. Harlan stared, pale, silent. Jack walked out into the gray afternoon. He drove back up the mountain in silence. Rain began soft at first, then harder, washing the city clean behind him. When he stepped through the front door, soaked and bleeding slightly through the bandage, from moving too fast, Sarah was waiting in the foyer. Lily and Tommy stood behind her, eyes wide. Sarah crossed the distance in 3 quick steps, thin arms wrapping around him, despite the wet coat. You're shaking, she whispered. Cold, he lied. She pulled back, hands framing his face. Did you... It's done. Her eyes searched his relief, warring with fresh fear. They won't come back, no. Tears slipped free. She pressed her forehead to his chest, rain soaking into her sweater. Jack wrapped his good arm around her, tight, protective. Inside him, the storm raged on. Remorse for every moment Sarah had suffered alone. Fierce love for the fragile family fate had given him violent gratitude that he had been strong enough to end the threat. Lily ran forward, small arms encircling his waist. Tommy followed, hesitant, then fierce. Jack sank to one knee, bringing them all into the circle of his embrace. Sarah whispered against his shoulder, You didn't have to do this alone. I did. She shook her head, tears falling faster. We're a family now. Families don't go alone. The word family landed like sunlight after endless night. Jack closed his eyes. The conflict inside him reached its sharpest point. Guilt for years, lost overwhelming love for what remained, absolute determination to protect it forever. He pressed lips to Sarah's hair, then to Lily's, then rested his cheek against Tommy's head. I'm home, he said quietly. Sarah's sob broke, soft, relieved. Welcome back. Outside, rain drummed steadily on the roof. Inside, a confrontation had ended, and something unbreakable had begun. Rain continued to fall through the night, steady and unhurried, drumming against the safe house roof like fingers tapping out an old patient rhythm. Inside, the living room glowed with low lamplight, warm pools of amber that softened the edges of leather furniture and polished wood. Sarah sat on the wide sofa, knees drawn up beneath one of Jack's cashmere throws, a mug of chamomile tea cradled between thin hands. Steam rose in faint curls. She inhaled the scent slowly, still marveling at the simple luxury of tea that tasted like flowers instead of dust. Lily slept upstairs in the room they had begun to call hers. Walls painted soft sage bed piled with quilts and pillows that had never known threadbare sheets. Tommy had insisted on staying in the same room, sleeping on the trundle bed pulled out from beneath. He had fallen asleep, clutching the manila envelope with his mother's medical papers, as though letting go might make the miracle disappear. Jack stood at the window back to the room, watching rain streak the glass. His shoulder ached beneath fresh bandages, dull fire that matched the sharper burn inside his chest. He had not slept. Not really. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Harlan's face, heard the crack of the ceiling shot, felt the moment the second man had moved for his weapon. The confrontation had ended cleanly, too cleanly. Men like Harlan did not fold so easily. A soft footstep behind him. Sarah rose from the sofa blanket trailing. She stopped a few feet away, hesitant, respectful. "You're still bleeding through," she said quietly. Jack glanced down. A faint pink stain had bloomed on the white gauze visible at the collar of his shirt. He shrugged, small motion that cost him. "It's nothing. It's not nothing." Her voice trembled, soft, timid, polite. "You almost died because of us." He turned then. Moonlight caught the hard planes of his face, the faint shadows beneath his eyes. "I didn't die. And it wasn't because of you." Sarah stepped closer. Then why does it feel like it was Jack looked at her, really looked? Thin frame swallowed by the oversized sweater wrists, still wrapped in gauze that made her look even more fragile, eyes wide with the kind of gratitude that hurt to receive. The disparity struck him again, violent, unrelenting. His coat draped over the chair cost more than every piece of clothing Sarah had ever owned combined. The house around them, security systems heated, floors art on the walls, represented decades of calculated power. And she, malnourished, sleep-deprived, carrying the weight of too many cold nights and humiliating refusals, stood before him asking why he cared. He felt the old remorse surge sharper now, tearing deeper. He had failed his sister because he had been powerless. He had failed Lily because he had been absent. Now every protective instinct roared louder, fiercer, burning through every layer of control he had built. "Because you matter," he said simply. Sarah's breath caught. Tears welled, sudden, overwhelming. She pressed a hand to her mouth. Jack crossed the distance in 2 steps. He lifted her chin gently, thumb brushing away a tear. "You've carried enough alone." She shook her head, small, frantic. "I don't know how to stop. Then let me carry it with you." The words landed like absolution. Sarah's knees buckled slightly. Jack caught her elbows steady, strong. She leaned into him, forehead against his chest, sobbing, quietly released so deep it felt like breaking. Jack held her good arm, wrapped around narrow shoulders, while rain fell harder outside. The moment shattered with a soft chime from the security panel in the hallway. Jack stiffened. Sarah felt it immediately, pulled back, eyes wide. "What is it?" He moved past her, swift, silent. The panel glowed blue. A single alert, inner perimeter breach, one of the service doors unlocked from inside. Jack's jaw locked. "Stay here." He drew the pistol from the small of his back, matte black familiar weight, and moved down the corridor. The house had gone deathly quiet. At the end of the hallway near the laundry room, a figure waited tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the dark jacket of Jack's own security detail. Ricky, one of his longest-serving men, the one who had scaled the oak tree to cut Sarah down, the one Jack had trusted with the children's lives. Ricky held a phone in one hand, screen glowing. In the other, a small black device Jack recognized instantly, a tracker. The kind used to mark vehicles for later retrieval. Jack stopped 10 feet away, pistol steady. "Ricky." The man lifted his head, no fear in his eyes, only cold calculation. "Boss." "You opened the door." "Had to." They were waiting. Jack's voice dropped dangerously soft. "Who Harlan's people?" "They doubled the offer. Said you were going soft. Said the woman and the kid were liabilities." Ricky's lip curled. They were right. Silence stretched thin, lethal. Jack felt betrayal hit like a second bullet, hot, searing straight through the chest. This was not just a man who had worked for him. This was someone he had pulled out of worse places, paid for his mother's cancer treatment, stood beside through blood and deals. Family in the only way Jack had ever understood it. "Why?" The word came out raw. Ricky shrugged. "Money talks louder than loyalty when you've got debts. You taught me that." Jack's hand tightened on the grip. Inside him, the storm reached hurricane-force remorse for trusting too easily, violent rage at the threat to his family, absolute determination to end this now. "You sold them out. I gave you a chance to walk away clean. You didn't take it." Jack took one step forward. "Where are they?" "Outside. Waiting. You hand over the woman and the girl, they let you live. Refuse." Ricky lifted the phone. "One call. They come in shooting." Jack's vision narrowed red at the edges. He could hear the children's breathing from upstairs, soft, trusting, Sarah's footsteps behind him, hesitant, terrified. He felt Sarah reach his side, thin hand on his arm. Jack Ricky's eyes flicked to her, calculating, dismissive. Jack stepped in front of Sarah, shielding her completely. "Tell them to stand down," he said quietly. Ricky smiled, thin, ugly. Too late. The lights flickered once, twice. Power cut from outside. Darkness swallowed the hallway. Sarah gasped, small panicked sound. Jack caught her wrist, pulled her behind him. Ricky lunged, knife, flashing in the faint moonlight from a high window. Jack moved faster, pistol up, barrel pressed to Ricky's forehead before the blade cleared 6 inches. "Don't." Ricky froze. Jack's voice low, lethal. "Drop it." The knife clattered to the floor. Jack reached out, took the phone from Ricky's hand, smashed it under his heel. "Tell me where they are." Ricky laughed, short, bitter. "You think this ends with me?" Jack pressed harder. "It ends with you breathing if you talk." Ricky stared, then deflated. 2 vans. Service road. 8 men. "They're waiting for my signal." Jack nodded once. He turned to Sarah, eyes softening for the briefest moment. "Get the children. Panic room. Now." She nodded, tears streaming, ran upstairs. Jack looked back at Ricky. "You made your choice." Ricky swallowed. "You would have done the same." "No," Jack said quietly. "I wouldn't." He struck once, precise, efficient. Ricky crumpled unconscious. Jack moved swift, silent toward the service door. Outside, rain fell harder. 2 black vans idled at the edge of the drive, headlights off. Jack stepped into the open, alone, visible. Doors slid open. 8 men emerged, weapons raised. Jack raised both hands slowly. "I'm here," he called. "Let's talk." The leader stepped forward, same man from the earlier confrontation. "You're out of moves, Callahan." Jack's voice carried over the rain. "You're on my property. You're holding my family. That's a bad combination." The man laughed. "Your family, the waitress and the kids, their leverage." Jack's jaw tightened. Inside him, violent tearing, love for Sarah and the children collided with cold fury. He lowered his hand slowly, then quiet, final, wrong answer. From the ridge, silent shadows moved. Jack's remaining loyal men, Mike at the lead, closed the net. Flashlights snapped on, blinding. Rifles trained. The attackers froze. Jack stepped forward, 1 step, 2. Drop them. Weapons clattered to wet gravel. The leader stared disbelief, turning to fear. Jack stopped inches away. "You tell Harlan the message is final. 1 more move and there won't be enough left to identify." The man nodded, jerky, terrified. Jack gestured. His men moved in, cuffing, securing. He turned back toward the house. Sarah stood in the doorway. Lily and Tommy pressed against her sides, eyes wide. Jack crossed the distance, rain soaking through his shirt, blood seeping through bandages again. Sarah met him halfway, threw herself into his arms. "You're safe," he whispered against her hair. She sobbed, quiet, wrenching. "You went out there alone." "I had to." Lily clung to his leg. Tommy stood beside her, silent, fierce. Jack knelt, bringing them all close. "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." Sarah cupped his face, tears mixing with rain. "You came back." He pressed his forehead to hers, shaking. "I always will." Inside him, remorse, love, determination reached unbearable intensity. Betrayal had cut deep, but family, fragile, fierce, held stronger. Outside, rain fell. Inside, they held each other tighter, and nothing, not power, not money, not even blood, would break them again. The rain had stopped some time before dawn, leaving the mountain air sharp and clean, every pine needle glistening like glass under the first pale light of October. Inside the safe house, the silence felt heavier than usual, condensed, watchful, as though the walls themselves understood that something irrevocable was coming. Jack had not slept. He sat in the study with the lights-off bandaged shoulder throbbing in steady pulses that matched the rhythm of his thoughts. The betrayal from Ricky still burned hot, personal. A knife twisted in an old wound, but it paled beside the larger truth he could no longer avoid. Lily was his daughter. Every day he delayed, telling Sarah felt like another theft from the years already stolen. He rose quietly, moved through darkened hallways to the room where the children slept. The door stood ajar. Soft breathing drifted out. He pushed it wider. Lily lay curled on her side, one small hand flung across the pillow. Tommy slept on the trundle bed below, face slack, the manila envelope still tucked against his chest like armor. Jack stood in the doorway, a long moment watching them breathe innocent, trusting fragile in ways that made his chest ache with violent tenderness. He turned away before the emotion could crack him open completely. Downstairs, Sarah waited in the kitchen, already awake, already moving, despite the pain that still lingered in every careful step. She wore one of Jack's oversized flannel shirts over leggings. Sleeves rolled back revealed thin wrists, still marked by fading rope burns. She was pouring coffee black strong the way he liked it, into a heavy ceramic mug that cost more than her old trailer's monthly rent. She looked up when he entered. Eyes soft, tired but steady. "You didn't sleep," she said quietly. "Neither did you." Sarah set the mug on the island between them. "I keep thinking about last night, about how close we came to losing everything again." Jack leaned against the counter opposite her. "We didn't lose, but we could have." Her voice trembled, soft, timid, polite, even in fear. "And it would have been my fault, my debt, my mess." Jack reached across the marble, covered her cold hand with his warm one. "It was never your fault." She looked down at their joined hands, his broad scarred, powerful, hers thin, trembling, marked by years of labor and cold. The contrast struck her again, humiliating in its unfairness. She had spent so many nights rocking Lily through hunger cramps, whispering promises she could not keep, while this man, wealthy beyond imagination, had existed in a world where problems could be solved with money and will. Tears welled. She blinked them back. Jack felt the shift inside her, the old shame resurfacing, and the remorse in his own chest sharpened to agony. He had failed her before she even knew his name. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. Sarah lifted her eyes, wary, curious, afraid. He took a slow breath. "Lily, she's mine." The words hung between them, simple, devastating. Sarah froze, color drained from her face. "What, 9 years ago?" "Charlotte, you left before I could," he stopped, swallowed. "I didn't know you were pregnant. I swear I didn't know." Sarah's hand slipped from his. She stepped back once, twice, until her spine met the cabinets. Dizziness hit her hard, room-tilting breath shallow. She pressed palms to the counter to steady herself. "You're saying you're her father?" Jack nodded, once slow, certain. Sarah's knees buckled. She slid down the cabinets until she sat on the cool tile, thin legs folded beneath her. Tears came fast, now silent, unstoppable. Jack moved around the island, slow, careful, crouched in front of her. "I should have looked," he whispered. "I should have known. Every cold night, every skipped meal, every time you had to beg a landlord for one more day, I could have stopped it. I could have been there." Sarah shook her head, violent denial. "I didn't tell you. I was scared. You were you. Powerful. Dangerous. I thought." Her voice cracked. "I thought she'd be safer without you." The confession tore through Jack, remorse so fierce it felt like bleeding inside. He reached out, hesitant, cupped her face between his palms. "I'm sorry," he said, raw broken. "I'm so sorry." Sarah covered his hands with hers, thin fingers trembling against warm skin. "She has your eyes," she whispered. "I saw it the first time you looked at her. I didn't want to believe it." Jack's throat closed. "She deserves better than me." "She deserves you," Sarah answered, fierce, sudden. "She deserves someone who would bleed for her. Who already has." The words struck deep forgiveness. He had not earned love he had not dared hope for. They remained like that, kneeling on expensive tile foreheads, touching while dawnlight strengthened outside. Then sharp, sudden a sound from upstairs. A small cry. "Lily." Jack rose instantly, pulled Sarah up with him. They moved as one up the stairs down the hall. The bedroom door stood open. Lily sat upright in bed, eyes wide, terrified, clutching the blanket to her chest. Tommy knelt beside her, small hands on her shoulders, trying to soothe. "Mom," Lily's voice cracked. "They're here again. I heard them." Jack crossed the room in 3 strides, scooped Lily into his arms despite the fire in his shoulder. "They're not here," he said firmly. "It was a dream." But Lily shook her head, frantic. "No, outside. Voices. They want Mom." Sarah reached them, wrapped arms around both Jack and Lily. Tommy pressed close, silent, fierce. Jack met Sarah's eyes over the children's heads. "I'll handle it," he said quietly. Sarah's grip tightened. "Not alone." Jack hesitated, then nodded. He carried Lily downstairs, Sarah and Tommy following. At the security panel, he pulled up the feeds. 2 vans, same make, same model, idling at the base of the private drive. 8 men, armed, waiting. Jack's jaw locked. Harlan had not listened. He turned to Sarah. "Panic room. Now." She shook her head. "We stay together." Jack looked at Lily, his daughter eyes wide with fear she should never have known. The conflict inside him reached unbearable intensity. Love so fierce it hurt remorse, so deep it drowned him, determination so violent it consumed every doubt. He set Lily down, kissed her forehead. "Stay with your mom," he whispered. Then to Sarah, "If anything happens, take them and run. There's a trail behind the house. Mike will meet you at the lower gate." Sarah's tears fell faster. "Jack," he cupped her face, brief, fierce. "I love you both, more than anything." Then he turned, grabbed a rifle from the locked cabinet and walked out into the gray morning. Alone, the van's doors opened as he approached. Harlan stepped out, smiling, triumphant. "You should have taken the deal, Callahan." Jack stopped 20 feet away, rifle loose at his side. "This ends now," he said quietly. Harlan laughed. "You're one man. Bleeding. Tired. We're 8. Jack's voice remained calm. "You're right." He raised the rifle, slow, deliberate. "But I'm the one who cares enough to die for them." The first shot cracked Harlan's shoulder. He dropped. Chaos erupted, men shouting, weapons raised. Jack moved fast, precise firing controlled bursts that dropped 2 more before they could aim. Pain tore through his shoulder, fresh wound reopening, but he did not stop. A third man charged, knife raised. Jack sidestepped, dropped him with a single shot to the leg. Then silence. The remaining 4 froze, rifles wavering. Jack stood bleeding, breathing hard, rifle steady. "Tell Harlan," he rasped, "the debt is paid in full." They backed away slowly, then ran. Jack sank to one knee, vision blurring. Behind him, footsteps. Sarah running, Lily and Tommy beside her. She reached him first, dropped to the wet grass, hands pressing against the blood, soaking his shirt. "Jack, Jack!" He looked up, found her eyes. Lily threw herself against him, sobbing. "Daddy, don't leave." The word daddy shattered him. Jack pulled them close, good arm around all 3, rain beginning again, soft and steady. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm here." Sarah cupped his face, tears mixing with rain. "You're bleeding, I know." She pressed her forehead to his shaking. "You almost, but I didn't." Lily clung tighter. "I knew," she sobbed. "I always knew." Jack closed his eyes, tears slipping free, remorse, love, relief, crashing together in violent waves. He had sacrificed everything, and they had saved him. In the gray October morning blood rain family they held on. Nothing would break them again. The October sun rose slow and gentle over the Blue Ridge ridges, painting the safe house windows in soft rose and gold. Inside, the air carried the faint scent of pine from the open terrace doors, and the warm sweetness of fresh coffee brewing in the kitchen. Jack sat on the wide leather sofa in the living room, shoulder still bandaged beneath a loose gray sweater, Lily curled in his lap like she had always belonged there. She traced small circles on his uninjured forearm with one finger, humming a tune she had learned from Sarah years ago in their cold trailer when there was nothing else to fill the silence. Sarah stood at the kitchen island, thin frame wrapped in one of Jack's soft flannel shirts, pouring orange juice into 3 mismatched glasses she had found in a cabinet. The glasses were heavy crystal, catching light like tiny prisms. She handled them with the same careful reverence she once used for the single chipped mug that had been their only drinking vessel back home. Tommy sat at the counter beside her, still wary, still watchful, but no longer poised to run. He accepted the glass she offered with a quiet thank you, fingers brushing hers for the briefest moment. Jack watched them, his daughter, her chosen brother, the woman who had carried both of them through hunger and cold and nights when wind sliced through trailer walls like knives. The sight pressed against his ribs until breathing hurt. Remorse still lived inside him, gnawing relentless, but it had begun to change shape. No longer only punishment. Now, it was fuel. A vow carved deeper with every heartbeat. Never again would they know deprivation while he breathed. Sarah crossed the room, bare feet, silent on the hardwood, set the tray of juice and toast on the low table. She sat beside Jack, close enough that their shoulders touched, and handed Lily a piece of toast spread with honey. "Eat slow, sweetheart," she murmured. "Your stomach isn't used to so much at once." Lily nodded solemnly, small bites, careful chewing, then offered half to Jack. "For your owie," she said. Jack took it, heart cracking open wider. "Thank you, baby." Sarah watched the exchange, tears shimmering but not falling. She had spent so many mornings scraping together dry cereal or plain rice, so Lily could have something in her belly before school. Now honey, real honey in a glass jar, dripped golden onto thick bread baked that morning by hands she had never met. The disparity still felt unreal, humiliating in its kindness, dizzying in its generosity. Jack felt her tremble beside him. He reached for her hand, threaded their fingers together. "You okay?" he asked softly. Sarah nodded, small, unsteady. "I keep waiting for it to disappear. All of this. The warmth. The food. You." Her voice cracked on the last word. "I keep thinking I'll wake up back in the trailer, cold, hungry, alone, and none of it was real." Jack tightened his grip. "It's real." She looked at him, eyes searching, vulnerable. "How do I trust that? Because I'm not going anywhere," he answered. "And because you deserve every bit of it." The words landed heavy truth he had carried too long in silence. Lily looked between them, wise beyond her years. "Mommy's scared," she whispered. "She thinks good things always go away." Jack's throat closed. He lifted Lily higher, pressed a kiss to her temple, then met Sarah's gaze again. "They don't have to," he said quietly. "Not anymore." Tommy spoke, then voice small but steady. "My mom's coming home next week. The doctor said so. Because of you." Jack nodded once. "She'll have everything she needs. And so will you." Tommy swallowed hard. Then, quietly, he reached across the table and touched Jack's wrist. Brief, grateful. Sarah watched the gesture, tears slipping free now. She leaned into Jack's side-thin frame, fitting against his strength like it had always been meant to. "I don't know how to be part of this," she whispered. "I don't know how to belong in a world like yours." Jack turned, cupped her cheek with his free hand. "You belong wherever you are loved, and you are loved fiercely. Completely. By all three of us." Sarah's breath hitched shock, wonder, overwhelming relief crashing together. She pressed her forehead to his shaking. "I was invisible for so long," she breathed. "No one saw me. No one cared." "I see you, Jack," answered voice raw. "I've always seen you. I was just too late. But I'm here now." Lily wrapped small arms around both their necks, Tommy joining a heartbeat later, 4 hearts beating close in the quiet morning light. Jack held them good arm, encircling as much as he could, reach tears slipping silently down his own cheeks. Inside him, the storm had changed, not gone, but transformed. Remorse still lived there, deep aching, but now it carried purpose. Love burned brighter than guilt. Compassion outshone power. He understood truly painfully that wealth meant nothing without humanity, that poverty could not diminish. Love, that skin color, money status, none of it separated hearts that chose to care. He whispered against Sarah's hair, "We'll build something new. Together. No more cold nights. No more hunger. No more fear." Sarah nodded, sobbing softly. "Together." Lily kissed his cheek. "Family," she said simply. Tommy echoed quiet, certain family. Outside, the sun climbed higher, warming ridges that had once seemed so distant. Inside, a family forged in pain, bound by choice, began again. And in that quiet, condensed moment, love proved stronger than any divide. This story reminds us that true knowledge begins when we open our hearts to see another's pain. The lesson here is simple yet profound. Compassion costs nothing but can heal everything. Education of the soul happens when we choose mercy over indifference. Another knowledge we gain is that love recognizes no barriers of wealth or poverty. The lesson of forgiveness teaches us to release yesterday's failures. Through this journey, we find education in humility, knowing that power without kindness is empty. One more knowledge shines. Clear humanity connects us beyond skin color or circumstance. The lesson of protection shows strength lies in safeguarding the vulnerable. Finally, this tale offers education and hope that even the hardest hearts can soften when met with trust and love. To everyone watching this video, may you carry good health in your bodies, joyful moments in your days, and deep peace in your hearts every single day. If this story touched you, if it stirred something real inside, please subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next powerful journey. Hit that like button if it moved you and share it with someone who needs to feel seen today. I read every comment, so tell me, how did this story make you feel? Did it remind you of moments in your own life when kindness arrived unexpectedly? Share your thoughts, your emotions, your memories. I want to hear the deep things living in your hearts. Thank you for staying until the end. I'll see you again in the next video very soon. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.